Hey, hey, Blue Table fans. It's late at night. I'm about to hang up my hat for the day. However, I felt like my update was a little thin. I think I was downloaded like Daffy Duck. So anyway, I did have somebody ask about role-playing games, my advice for running a game, and I've got a lot of advice. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was in 6th grade. One of my friends had a garage that was separate from the house, but his parents had converted it into a bedroom, and it had a bathroom and everything in it. One day I walk in and they're playing D&D on the floor. I'm like, what's going on, guys? They explain it to me and I was hooked. And I had to be the DM because I love making it up. And in fact, I just want to show you something. Hold on. I'm working on it. So this was the edition that I had at the time. Yeah, and me and my buddies used to play it in the library during recess, and I just loved it. Couldn't get enough of it. There you go. That's what that looks like. And I think the dice are in here too. Yeah, these. Check it out. Those things. All right, anyway, so my advice, and I've got a lot of it. The first thing is make all the rolls out in the open. And let me tell you, that is like high stakes. Because if you roll in secret as the DM, the players know that you could fudge the rolls, that you could save them, probably more likely to save them than harm them by rolling in secret and saying something happened when it really, that's not what the dice said. But if you roll everything in the open, oh man, it's like, yeah, if I roll a 20, you're dead. And that's nail-biting pleasure right there. You got to get those stakes up, like gambling. Like, oh my gosh, this is for real. And the other thing is, I also do hit points out in the open. I narrate it. So when a player hits the monster for 19 hit points, did it make a dent? Were they successful? Is the monster close to dying? Got to put some description in there, and the numbers really, really help. And it gives the players a sense of a goal. You do 19 damage, that's half. The monster's down to 19 hit points. And it also, when it starts getting close, like that troll, it could just, like everyone's down to 3 or 4 hit points, and that troll could just go in and just clean up. And one player attacks, and it's like, all right, you're doing 1d8 fire damage. He only has 8 hit points left, and they are just nail-biting. Everyone's leaning in when that person is rolling to see if they get that 8. And that really, it increases the tension quite a bit. I found it very rewarding, and I'd highly recommend doing that. I also display armor class as well. If an encounter has like 6 different creatures in it, I just create a little piece of paper, like a little cheat sheet. I hang it on the DM screen. I just tell it, and it speeds things along. And of course I have a lot of house rules and other advice, but that's the big one that popped to my mind when I was reading this person's question. So I'm going to do a second follow-up video to talk more about what to do there. Also, what else? Here's the big thing. I subscribe on Facebook to several role-playing game groups. Starfinder, Pathfinder, D&D 5th edition, all sorts of things. 1st edition, there's still guys out there cracking it with that. And it's the same questions over and over again, or the same type of thing. I'm a DM, my player wants to do this, it seems overpowered. Like, they want a familiar, but they want it to be a cat with wings. But I'm going to say no, because that's not allowed. And I think to myself, okay, here's a game where the sky's the limit. It's a game of imagination. You could do or be anything in this game because we're going to get together and we're going to have a collective hallucination and decide how it's going to be. We're going to tell a story. Won't this be wonderful? Oh, but by the way, you can't do that. Oh, and you have to ask me permission for everything. And I'm just like, these buzzkill DMs. You should say yes. It should be like improv. The rule of improv is yes and. So in an improv scene, if you have a banana and you say, haha, this is a gun, give me your money. And the other person says, it's not a gun, it's a banana. Well, they just killed the scene. They just buzz-killed the improv. So you're supposed to say yes and also add something to it. The gun I gave you for your birthday, how dare you? Like that. And so in a role-playing game, my default answer is yes. I really like it. I'm up for my players making their own classes. And you think of balance. The only balance I look for is balance as a group. I don't want one person to be so powerful that it overshadows the group. Or for everyone to be powerful and one person to be playing more of a storytelling type character and feel left out. Like they need to roll a 19 or a 20 to hit anything because all the other players have min-maxed it out. But let's get back to the core idea, which is it's a shared fantasy. It's a fantasy role-playing game. So what is the fantasy of your players? Is it to get in there and really look at the rules and go online and juice it up and make the most powerful things they can? Awesome. That's something it's not discussed. I think that's really missed in role-playing games, is an initial thing where you sit down with your players and you say, what kind of fantasy would you guys like to have? And the DM and the players have distinct roles. The DM is a host. He's the one who is hosting the fantasies of his players. He gives up his own fantasies. If your fantasy is to have all power and make sure everybody keeps the rules, well, I guess you could do that. Bit of a buzzkill. But at the very least, talk about it with your players. I'm running a game where we do it strictly by the rules, and I'm very concerned about balance. However, just say yes. Have fun with it. And if one player is more powerful than the others, it's okay. You have all power behind that screen. What's the problem? Just balance the encounter internally. So we're on to sort of a new topic here, which is the party encounters a mixed group of different opponents. And so what you do is, there's no law saying how you have to dictate the flow of battle. As a DM, you could create an internal reasoning like why these different creatures attack different people and why they do what they do, or maybe they run away sooner or something like that. However, the players don't know that. That's all behind the screen. So what you do is your player that's more powerful than the others, don't say anything. Just throw 10 extra orcs in his corner for him to slice and dice them. And that's okay, as long as that person's having fun and the other players are having fun too. And as a DM, you got to navigate multiple situations simultaneously and juggle it. And it's a skill. It's not just like, oh, 30 gnolls appear, there's 6 players, 5 gnolls go to each person. Oh no, there could be a boss, there could be a wizard gnoll, there could be there are hyenas that are out there sort of attacking some of the stragglers, and you can make sure everyone has fun by conducting the flow of battle. Now, in a game, sometimes the players will have a fantasy. I want to be in a game where everything is fair and it goes according to these preset rules of the game. Pathfinder is very much like this. Games that have challenge ratings very much follow this pattern. What I mean is, that once they started doing challenge ratings, they put a limit on the DM. Challenge rating 10 should be a moderate challenge for 4 PCs of 10th level. And you end up being limited. So my advice, if you're in one of those groups and you've talked to your players and they said, we want to play it by the rules and not just have you make things up as you go along, then you still have a lot of leeway. In Pathfinder, I ran Kingmaker by the rules very strictly. And by the way, it was a lot of fun. It was the first time I'd ever done something like that. Like, ran it strictly by what exactly the module said. No deviation at all rules out in the open. And it was very exciting on a certain level. However, I was able to make things more challenging through wandering monsters, which was also allowed as well. And if you're in a group like that and you're the DM, you can also have different sorts of terrain as well. There's no limitations on that. Is it raining that day? Is invisibility not improved? Do they encounter the monsters on a bridge as they're trying to cross a bridge? There's lots of ways that you can modulate within the rules, the technical rules. You modulate the challenges that the party has. And if they want to play by the rules, live by the sword, die by the sword, guys. And we had a really good time with Kingmaker. I really loved it. So that would be the first thing to do, is sit down with your players. The other, and figure out what type of game you want to play. What is the fantasy that you want to have? We want to be powerful and go and have sort of like be the superheroes or even the villains and be more powerful typically than the things that we encounter. And that's fun. And that's a great human fantasy because you're escaping your life. Well, what's your life like? Maybe a lot of the people playing role-playing games, in their real life, they're powerless. If you are a young teenager living at home, power is really quite a fantasy. If your group works in an office where they don't have a lot of leeway in how their life goes when they're at work, power is a great fantasy to have. And on my groups, of course, a typical complaint is my party are murder hobos. Basically, that the hobo part meaning they wander from town to town and they basically they murder everybody. And I think to myself, well, it's just a matter of expectations. If your fantasy is that's what you're doing, and there's certainly justification for that in fantasy literature, then have that fantasy and let it be okay. And my last bit that I'm going to talk about on this video is what I call roll with it. And it's a bit of a, I don't know, would you call it a pun? Roll, R-O-L-E, like role-playing. If your player finds something like a magic item that maybe is a little overpowered and you're regretting it, no, just go with it. Make it part of the story. Use it as an opportunity to bring up different layers to the story. So, for example, if you're playing by the rules and you roll up a treasure and you roll up a +5 Holy Avenger, oh great, now this 6th level paladin is unbalanced. Well, it's a great opportunity. Maybe a more powerful paladin comes looking for the sword. Maybe the sword has its own agenda and it starts to telepathically communicate with the player. Maybe the player comes across some morally ambiguous situation where they make the wrong decision and the sword doesn't like them anymore. Be careful with that sort of thing though, because players don't like things taken away. If you have 4 players and one of them finds something that makes them, let's say, overpowered, it'll be easier to give the other 3 things, have them find things, than to try and take away the thing. Again, don't be a buzzkill DM. Yes, and roll with it. Go with, well, how can this story unfold? Now, so thank you very much for listening to my sagely DM advice. I've DM'd a ton. I've almost always, in any given year of my life, for the past 38 years, I've been running some kind of role-playing game. My style is OP, make it up as you go along. I make these epic stories. I don't really look at power level. I Monty Hall my players with all this amazing stuff, and then I just ramp up the creatures, and I tend to make like every encounter feels like a boss encounter. Like after every single room, the party's just exhausted because I feel like I have to challenge them. And that's not great. A lesson I've learned recently is you gotta modulate those and have natural ebb and flow. Have a bunch of encounters where they just mop the floor with whatever the challenge is. Have them be the heroes and have it be something where they go in and they really save the day. It's okay. It's only a game. You got to roll with the punches. Roll, use everything as a role-playing opportunity to expand it. All right, well, that's all I got to say. Where are we? We're at 16 minutes. All right, fantastic. I'll have 2 videos up today. That makes me very excited. My wife she called me about 20 minutes ago, like, hey, how about you get home? All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it.